about driving. Now, Max, have you ever gotten in a car crash that drove you off of a bridge?
That's a very specific scenario. But as it happens...
Oh, my God.
No.
You got me.
I
Set me up, and then you pulled the rug out from under me.
I have never been in a car accident, actually.
Are you kidding?
No.
Wow, that's actually really impressive.
I don't want to. I'm a pretty good driver, but just bad shit seems to happen to my cars all the time that are out of my control.
So that's the trade-off.
Yeah.
That it's like you have a Cassandra situation where it's like, oh, and like I can see the future, but no one believes me. Instead, it's you never get in accidents, but your cars just get fucking demolished on their own.
Well, I was joking with my little sister because the car before this one was destroyed in a flash flood. In this one, the engine caught on fire.
Yes.
So now I just need rocks to fall in the next car, and the next car after that to be destroyed by a tornado.
You just need earth, wind, and fire.
No, I'm going for the full elements. We already got water.
You're
fire.
doing an Avatar situation. Okay, yeah.
Long ago, the 4 ways of destroying Max's car lived in harmony.
Yes. Then it all got fucked up.
And it all got fucked up when his engine caught on fire.
What happens after you get the tornado and boulders?
I become the Avatar of having my cars destroyed. But oh man, dude, that fucking sucked. I am if it was gonna catch fire and break down, I'm glad that it was it finally died in a parking space within walking distance of your apartment.
That was so funny that it happened literally on your way to record because it was like a sign from God. You know?
I loved how I could feel my engine seizing up as I pulled off the exit and managed to turn into that parking area right there. And I'm just I'm glad I got here because this car is not moving anymore.
Well, Max, what if I told you ever since that moment that was not actually the case? What if I told you you crashed on your way to record that day and you have been wandering in purgatory ever since?
I mean, honestly, this place feels like hell sometimes, so I wouldn't be surprised.
All you do is record podcasts.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, honestly, that could be hell.
Yeah.
Or it could be the Spectator,
Film Podcast. Woo!
Welcome, everyone. I'm Maxx.
You know what I just realized? We've been doing all these Halloween episodes, and we've never once used our proper title.
Oh, yeah, the Spectator Film Podcast.
What negligence.
I know. To be fair, we did a lot of, not to show how the sausage is made too much, but we did record a lot of these prior to October, so.
And 2020 has just felt like.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's been a hell of a time, folks.
But it is the Spectator Film Podcast. Hello, everyone. As I said, I'm Maxx.
And I'm Austin. And, if you want to hear more about Max's car problems, it's honestly, there are so many of them. Maxx has had so many car issues. We could probably get a bunch of different show intros out of that. So just let us know. A little 5-star rating from iTunes.
Or if you want to buy me a new car.
Or if you want to buy Maxx a new car, let us know. Because you'll probably have to buy Maxx a few cars because it'll keep happening. But anyway, that was a nice related topic to begin the show with, Maxx, because our movie we're doing today is Carnival of Souls.
Oh, I thought you were just going to say because our podcast is like a car crash, but okay, Carnival of Souls, that works too.
No, because then it would have to imply that our podcast can help you get groceries or bring you to work or would be expensive
or is exciting.
Yeah.
But no, we're doing Carnival of Souls, a movie that I watched years ago. It wasn't my pick, it was Austin's pick.
It was my pick.
Yes.
Haha.
I don't have many strong feelings on this movie, which is weird because we're doing a podcast on it, but I think it's worth talking about 100%.
Well, that's why you specifically have to get drunk today, because then you're going to start arguing for no reason.
Yes, of course. Austin has made some very strong mixed drinks that
I think mine was a little bit stronger than yours.
Austin's afraid to drink his now. But,
yeah. I'm very scared.
So we're going to get fucking crazy as this episode goes on.
Yes.
But yeah, I think I watched this movie when I was 15, 16, like a lot of horror movies.
Cool.
I love how you have your default answer of I watched this during my horror project.
No.
I'm saying like for horror movies in general.
Oh yeah,
Like you have your I watched this during my horror project, and I watched this when I was 15 or 16.
yeah.
Just when I was binging every horror movie physically possible.
Hmm.
Um and I remember kind of filing this in my brain in the same category as like the Twilight Zone movie or like
The
just-
Twilight Zone movie,
yeah.
because there's also an episode that's very much like this that
Yes,
we'll
but
bring
it,
up.
it
Yeah,
gives off major Twilight Zone vibes, but I remember when I was younger, I didn't quite get it, and of course, because I had seen The Sixth Sense because I existed at that time,
right.
I thought I'm like, oh well, I've seen this kind of thing done better. I don't necessarily agree with that assessment now. I don't think this is an amazing movie that I would put a gun to somebody's head if they hadn't seen it before, but I think it's a very interesting take on morality and reflecting on one's past, and sort of an interesting take on the spoilers you've been dead the entire time genre.
Oh, I think we spoiled that already.
Yes. But yeah, just a little heads up for our lovely listeners.
The fun thing about this movie is it's not going to change whether or not you find the movie engaging,
Yes.
because that's a trope by now. So now, like, it doesn't matter if you know or not. Right?
I think the strong points of this movie are in our lead performance and the score. I think they do a lot of heavy lifting.
Score's neat.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what really stuck out to me this time, is how the score sort of carries this movie along on a very eerie thing to keep you on edge, even when technically nothing's really happening.
Yeah.
In the film. Other than that, a lot of critics I've looked into, including Roger Ebert, the wonderful critic from Opposite Land, who's wrong about most things. I do agree with his take on the movie that it is kind of an extended episode of The Twilight Zone. Not necessarily a bad thing. There are a lot of great episodes of The Twilight Zone,
Right.
but I'm struggling. I don't hate this movie. I would probably like, it's middle of the road for me, but I'm still like, I'm engaged enough in it that I am excited to talk about it.
Is that a pun? It's
Yes.
not middle of the road. It's going off the edge.
Oh, these are the jokes, people.
Oh, you just clipped our audio.
Good.
Okay. Well, I guess Max just had to punish any listeners that enjoyed my jokes. Sorry about that,
How
everyone.
dare you enjoy Austin's jokes?
But no, I'm gonna disagree with you. I'm a little bit more hyperbolic about this movie. I would say this is one of the best horror movies of the '60s, and I would say it's probably. You know what? I wouldn't even say probably. This is the best version of this type of story in film. And I think it's a fascinating combination of horror movie and road movie, where this is often not discussed as a road movie, but there's a few resources I'm going to link to in the show notes that do discuss it as such. And I think it's just really interesting. I think it has some fascinating things to say about femininity in a Marxist context. There's a lot of interesting discussions and examinations of labor and how that works with the road movie being sort of a 20th century version of Manifest Destiny Western type movie. The idea of the open road being this place where you can go make your own destiny in America, and then this being shut down for this character. And then how that results in this weird undeath lingering situation. I just think it's really fascinating. I find this movie to be very Lynchian, which is something that a lot of people have commented on, how there's some, stylistic similarities to David Lynch, but I think it really does go into that in a very interesting way. And I feel like this movie is full of mysteries. Like, I always want to revisit it because there's so many slightly peculiar decisions that are made that are just like, I don't know what it is about it. It's something about certain edits and the time they wait to cut from one shot to the next, the way that it works with the oddly stilted performances, and then just certain close-ups. I don't know how they do it. I don't know whether it's the type of lens or that specific angle. It just looks very peculiar. And I can't think of anything quite like it. And I think this movie, like you said, plot is not where it's doing most of its work. It's mostly in atmosphere, tone, and maybe extended scare sequences. But I just think it's a fascinating, interesting movie. And I think I watched it for the first time about 10 years ago now. And I've always found it to be very fascinating in that way. And I feel like uh, it feels so unique yet also familiar to me because I feel like so many people watched this and took things, different bits from it. Um, but I don't know. I can't really think of another movie that really occupies the same space in my mind. This is kind of a favorite of mine. So yeah. And I guess before we begin the episode, I did have some other, one quote I wanted to say a little bit. But I don't know. Did you have any other thoughts about it?
Um, None that are particularly urgent. I think I can save most of them in response to any quotes you might bring up or during the commentary itself.
Okay, perfect. So, the quote I'm going to be quoting from an essay that I found on JSTOR that is called "What Some Ghosts Don't Know: Spectral Incognizance and the Horror Film," written by someone named Viva Brifel, I believe it's pronounced. This essay is about 10 years old, but they situate the movie in this very interesting group of films that they call the genre of spectral incognizance, which is this interesting collection of movies. Like you were saying, Sixth Sense is one of them. They also discuss the others in this movie. The idea of a genre of movies or media where someone realizes that they were dead at the beginning or start of the narrative towards the end of the narrative, right? So you go on this journey thinking you're alive, and then you recognize that you're dead. Spectral incognizance. Obviously, the big example and the sort of precedent that sort of pioneers all this is Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which...
Excellent film.
Yeah, they did make it a film, didn't they? I think
Yes.
that around the same time. And the episode of The Twilight Zone, The Hitchhiker, I think came out just before this as well. But it's an interesting sort of genre of movie. One, by the way, that David Lynch has delved into as well. Not to spoil anything for anyone. But the quote I want to talk about is how this relates it to the narrative structure of this movie and other movies that participate in this storytelling sort of mode, where they write, "The protagonist of this genre, with whom the viewer is meant to identify for the entirety of the film, finds out in the final moments of the narrative that he or she has died and has been involved in a prolonged dying process. While a first viewing produces shock in the spectators and may therefore heighten their anxieties about death, the genre demands multiple viewings that subsequently attenuate these fears. The films try to prolong the metaphorical lives of their spectators by deploying a narrative structure that favors circularity and repetition over linear progress. The compulsion to repeat a potentially uncomfortable experience does not fuel the death drive, but a form of detached reading predicated on viewing death as a formal rather than metaphysical entity. We gradually detach from identifying with the protagonist and transition to identifying with the constant renewal of the narrative form." So the interesting part of that is the idea that you think of a story as like a linear sort of point A to point B journey, right? And these types of stories, what the author argues, is they instead divert you into forming a giant loop, right? Where it's like you watch the movie, you realize in the shocking moment that the character was dead the whole time. But now you feel compelled to revisit the movie and try to pick up on the clues that they were dead the whole time throughout the entire story. So it's a loop. It forms this loop that keeps going and going instead of having that linear A to B sort of.
Well, yeah, like if you talk to anybody about The Sixth Sense,
Yes.
you talk about like, oh wow, the first time I watched it was so crazy. But inevitably, the conversation is going to lead to them being like, yeah, and then I watched it again, and the movie's so fucking cool because you can be like, oh yeah, he is dead the entire time. It never slips up.
Yep.
So that does it grants rewatchability and adds life to this movie that might have or movies in this genre that might fizzle out afterwards, because as we've seen from Shyamalan, you can't just make movies on twists alone,
Yes.
because after the twist is done,
Yes.
nobody cares about your film anymore. But if you continue, if you make the twist so that it makes your movie worth reevaluating and just I'm viewing this through a completely different lens, and it might as well be a completely different film now.
Right.
You've given your movie almost immortality.
Yes.
And I do have to applaud this film for that. It's just, I don't know. As I've said before, I'm not the biggest Lynch fan in the world. I don't dislike him at all, but like I'm not.
Really?
No, it's just like I'm not.
I don't think you have said that before.
I'm not devoted to the Church of David Lynch.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I love the man. I think he is a gift, and I love the vast majority of his films, but I'm not going to be like, oh, everything Lynch has ever done is the best thing ever. Which has I'm going to admit on the podcast, I've never seen a single episode of Twin Peaks.
Me neither.
You're a fake Lynch fan.
Oh my God. I also own Twin Peaks Fire Walk with me, and I can't watch it because I know I have to get through Twin Peaks, but I just hate starting TV shows.
Same.
I hate TV.
Never. If you recommend a movie to me, 90% chance I will go home and watch that movie. If you recommend a TV show to me, go fuck yourself. I will never watch that TV show in my life.
Listeners, I don't mean to insult you, but TV sucks ass. TV sucks. TV blows chunks.
The Great British Bake Off is the only good TV show. All the other ones we can get rid of.
Reality TV, I'm actually more okay with, but I still don't watch it. I would never watch reality TV.
Great British Bake Off is like just like the cinematic equivalent of turning my brain off. Like I just need like, oh, Noel Fielding is making a funny joke while this person's making a nice looking cake, and I'm just like, okay, we're safe. Everything is safe.
But like, you asked me to watch a TV show, like narrative TV show. It's like not gonna happen. I'm sorry. I just don't care.
I have a roommate.
Not interested in.
I have a roommate who's big into like the epic grand TV stuff.
Oh, like prestige TV?
Yes.
Oh.
So to piss him off, I'll just like constantly just be like, yeah, it was kind of shit. It wasn't as bad as like The Sopranos or anything, but like it's. Well, I mean, man, this movie's just like, dude, that was kind of sexist. It's almost as bad as fucking Mad Men.
Just sucks ass, just like Game of Thrones, and
yeah, just constantly do that just to piss him off. He's so easily for that too. He's also a big Al Pacino fan, so I'll just put on the Jack and Jill Dunkachino thing just to piss him off.
Tell him you're out of order, and you're out of order.
How did we get here? Oh,
I don't know.
I think we took a detour.
I'm glad you said that word, because I think you could also connect this very easily to our detour commentary, where we talk a lot about how that subverts the idea of the promise of America, the American dream, alongside the road movie idea of like moving westward and how that shut down. In fact, I was going to read later on in the episode, perhaps from the same passage we quoted in that one from Andrew Britton in his review of Detour, because it's such a good introduction to the road movie. But yeah, so
yeah, well,
I don't want to spill the beans on that, but I do think it's interesting how both of us have not seen Twin Peaks. If I was going to watch a TV show, it would be Twin Peaks.
If I was going to watch a TV show, it would probably be Baby Looney Tunes. But after that, you know, now Twin Peaks isn't even the top 10. There are so many fucking shows.
Are you serious? What else would it be?
No, I'm not fucking...
Oh, well, okay.
You're no fun, Austin.
I'm confused.
You're okay. I think that's a good place to start the episode.
All right, let's go. Now that we're confused, let's go. We're watching the Criterion edition, everyone.
As we always do if we can.
Yes, because Criterion is great, despite what Maxx says.
Listen, that's been quite a while now.
I just like to stir up the shit, you know? I know you don't really...
Listen,
I know you like Criterion. I just...
Listen, just because they didn't have intuitive subtitles for their... releases.
Is it that they don't have intuitive subtitles, or that we're just dumb fucking idiots who don't know how to press the remote button that says subtitle because we assume it doesn't work?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Well, I love how the movie just begins. It feels very weird. And the beginning kind of reminds me of comments made about this movie by Bob Briggs, of all people, that maybe if I can find them, I can link to them in the show notes, where one of the things he talks about with this movie is how this did not originally play in like an art house audience, but it did sort of get that revival in the 90s. And they even remade this movie in the 90s.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think it was produced by Wes Craven, but it got sort of a more critical reputation, and then it was restored and it looked all nice. And Bob Briggs did not like that because he was like, you originally saw this movie and it looked like shit and you had to go out of your
I
way
wish
to
you
see
could put signs like that up now. Sorry. Road under construction, travel at your own risk. Of just like,
it's your own fucking fault.
listen, it's probably unsafe, but what are we gonna fucking do
You
about
can't do
it?
that in the US. We're too litigious. It's not going to work. But yeah, I think that's an interesting
Jesus
thing.
Christ, you want to flirt with the girls, not push them off the fucking bridge.
Well, Max, this is something we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the metaphor of the car, how important that is to American literature, movies, American everything. The car is super American as an image, and just the idea of the mobility that it represents, you know? Super important. Carnival of Souls. I love the titles to this.
Oh, tell me that's not the best spooky fucking title card you've ever seen in my life.
See, that's the thing I'm talking about with the Bob Briggs, though. It has this thing where it definitely caters to that art house audience because of how much it does not rely on plot, how much it relies on just a woman walking around a city, right? And how much it invests in mood and tone. But it, at the same time, still plays to that like cheap seats audience in ways that I find amusing. And at certain points, it's almost kind of campy, you know, where it's like, I imagine people could laugh at this movie at different points, but it still works, you know, in a way that sometimes, I don't know if you've ever seen any David Lynch revival screenings. The first time I went to go see Blue Velvet in a theater, I was surprised because people were laughing at different points, and I had never appreciated the humor in that movie.
That's actually nice. I had expected it to be like very just like pretentious, sort of like gospel of David Lynch. We have to take everything in this movie entirely seriously. But
Right.
like, Lynch would fucking hate you if you did that. So I'm glad to see that people.
Yes, and I think the comedy enhances its use of different tropes in telling its story because it's sort of alienates you a little bit in a special way to the fact of them being tropes. And I think it also, I mean, comedy and horror go hand in hand, and that's something we've talked about on the show a lot, even just structurally in terms of how you build a scare and you build a joke. They sort of are both things that you build up through a certain sense of tension and contradictions that then result in this climactic moment that's kind of like an explosion, right? And I think as far as the Lynch goes, you mentioned Roger Ebert earlier. I know that Roger Ebert in his review of Blue Velvet actually disliked the movie, I think, at first because he felt like it was a little bit too campy and silly and didn't take what was going on seriously, and he felt like it was kind of exploitative of Isabella Rossellini. I disagree. But
Like I said, Roger Ebert is usually wrong. He's right in the fact that I feel like this is an extended episode of The Twilight Zone. Although he said that in a derogatory way, I don't think you should.
yeah, this exceeds what that Twilight episode ever accomplished.
Although to be fair, what we mentioned before, an incident at Owl Creek Bridge, that was technically an episode of The Twilight Zone. It was just so well received that it was basically released as its own short film and won an Academy Award for Best Short Film. But
That was an episode of The Twilight Zone, literally?
yes.
But wait, the other one was also the same idea. That one was The Hitchhiker. I'm not an expert on The Twilight Zone
No.
because, as we discussed, I do not watch TV shows.
No, I'm 100% serious.
Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Ooh,
This is so beautiful. I love how she staggers out amid these, like, sort of abstract shapes of the river. The photography in this is very striking and interesting. I'm greatly saddened.
This image for the 60s was like very haunting. I don't know, just from like, and it's in direct contrast to the rest of the movie. Of just like everything is sort of prim and proper, but you feel out of place. But this is just, oh god.
Yeah, everything in this movie is very lyrical, you know? And I think that has a lot to do with like some of the match cuts too that they do. And just sort of the way they play with stuff like the editing rhythm and then the music.
Yeah, I killed some people.
That moment is funny to me when he like shirks his shoulders. But one thing I want to say before we get too far if you're watching this movie and you're listening to us and you're not as familiar with it, I would encourage you, if you have any interest in this movie at all, go back and rewatch it. Turn up the sound all the way. That's one of the most Lynchian elements. That close-up of her face is so weird to me. But the sound is one of the most interesting elements to this. This way it plays with sound is amazing.
I wish we had we have to turn the volume down so it doesn't pick up on the mics whenever we record this, but the soundtrack is something that really just caught my attention upon revisiting this movie.
It's great, and it's all done in that sort of church organ.
I was going to say,
style.
And it plays perfectly into...
Oh, there was the match cut, right? She turns the keys of the car, and now she's pressing the buttons on this giant organ.
And it plays into the narrative where, like, you have this haunting organ music, but it also is like, okay, she's a professional organist.
Yes. And you can, on a literal level, rationalize it into the narrative by saying, oh, this is part of her fever dream in her head, or, it is a slightly magical occurrence, right? But there's like a metaphysical nature to the organ music because it's her thing she studies and what she does and what she's passionate about. And of course it would be organ music in the non-diegetic sound because the diegetic space right now is being constructed by her own mind, sort of. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're now in the fantasy world that the movie acknowledges is not true reality. Or is it? It's a little bit of a mixture of both, I'd say. This place is amazing. This like organ building factory. Just the shapes they're able to find in
I
this
remember
is like,
looking at
oh
this
my goodness.
briefly and just feeling, wow, that's a fucking complicated ass organ. I don't know how to play that.
You thought it was one organ?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know shit about organs. I would have been like, wow, that's a lot.
And then she starts playing the devil's rock and roll.
Later on, and the priest's like, no, you're giving me a boner.
You can't play Hound Dog in here. It's the devil's music.
Only 12-year-old boys can give me a boner. You doing it is not allowed.
That's a Catholic joke, people.
I was raised Catholic.
Okay. Fuck you then. I don't know.
Speaking of fucking, the man has entered the frame.
What?
I'm just
Austin.
Okay,
you can't lose it this early into the episode.
I put we're drinking a drink called a Corpse Reviver, and I put too much absinthe in mine. Put more in mine than Max's, and Max is like, "No, you should drink more of it." And I'm thinking I might stop because there's.
To be fair, you also mixed that with a shot of J&B, and you just did a shot of sake.
I didn't put those in the drink, though.
I know, but they are in your system. Now your system is like one big mixed drink.
Anyway, I'm going to continue with the very cogent point I was making about this man and all the other men who like to fuck in this, where he puts his hand on her shoulder, the first moment of men inappropriately touching her, especially because she never, ever, ever responds to their advances. I think something interesting about this movie is how all the men are vaguely predatory. Another interesting thing is how
vaguely is doing a lot of work in that sentence.
Right.
I mean, vaguely probably by 1960s standards.
Nah, not even by then, not really. Like, you have the one very, very predatory neighbor character, Lyndon, and then everyone else is like, if they're not sexually predatory towards her, they are at the very least trying to like regulate and monitor her behavior in a very specific way.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Even the nice, quote unquote, nice characters were like, and it's not even men. We have the landlady doing that as well. It's just
she's one of the most Lynchian characters,
yeah.
where she's always like, I don't mind so much about taking baths. Take as many as you want. I love this too because these sorts of shots where the camera is just mounted on the front wheel of the car, they feel almost cinema verite to me. You know, there's that light touch of this, which really ground it as a road movie in ways that a lot of people probably don't understand at first. And think about how this is playing with the sort of idea of the road movie. The music right now she's listening to is very upbeat and everything. It's like this almost feels like an ad for a car from the 60s. You know, go on the open road, conquer your dreams, right? If this was nowadays, this would be a Jeep ad and they're driving off road, right? But it's about, the idea of formally the movement and the autonomy that are represented by cars. The idea that she's going there with her job, how that job and that myth of the American dream and how it plays with capitalism and working.
Ding, ding, ding. Everybody. For those of you who had your bingo cards at home for how long it would take Austin to complain about capitalism in this episode. Mark it down.
Marks it down.
Ba-dum-tsh.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, tweet at us with which one of you won and try again next week. Anyway, continue your thought, Austin.
Anyway, you can't separate the road movie from that idea of capitalism, though.
You can't extract anything or like separate anything from capitalism.
That's a good point.
It's consumed all of our lives.
I mean, we make a joke, but really, especially in the U.S., I mean, it's all blatantly forged on both that lie and the reality that is capitalism and work and labor.
Listen, this lady, she's stuck in purgatory, and what is she doing her entire time? She's trying to find her next job.
Or she's found her job, but it's like she's going there to do it. This fascinating scene. I wonder if that's the first time that the looking out the window and seeing something gag has ever been used in horror movies.
It can't be. I highly doubt that. There has to be so many different ones.
I don't know.
I'm wondering if, because I know one-to-one references are a terrible idea. But, I'm wondering,
Oh!
Are these pure hallucinations or, was the guy, looking through the window, somebody who found the car that she was dead in originally? Or is it, just, other souls trapped in purgatory?
I'm going to say it's potentially more profound than that.
Exactly. That's what I was saying.
Do you know who
No.
that actor is?
Bela Lugosi.
It's the director, Herc Harvey, playing that man.
You did mention that before,
Yeah.
but I had forgotten.
And by the way, just another fun fact, this movie originated because Herc Harvey, who was an educational filmmaker, saw that Saltair abandoned pavilion in Utah while he was making something. And he was so enchanted by that location that he was like, oh, we have to make a movie here. So he gathered up some of the other people he produced educational films with, and they started this production, and they reverse engineered this entire movie from just that image of them seeing that giant abandoned carnival pavilion area. And almost to the degree where when she sees it for the first time out the window, that's almost exactly how he saw it the first time. And I think it's very interesting that that's also the same moment where she sees him, the director, for the first time. There's something weirdly meta about the casting of the director as the man who's going to pull her back towards her death instead of letting her in that linear, mythos of the American dream way, go actually achieve her job and make a career for herself and sort of climb a social ladder, right? The man pulls her back, and it's the director sort of causing the detour, the digression from that linear straight road and creating the loop with the same image that the director was first entranced by. Fascinating to me. But we were just talking about whether or not that gag,
Oh, wonderful cut.
all the editing in this is great. The cuts are really interesting. But we were just talking about that gag with Herc Harvey appearing in the window and whether or not that was the first time. Something I also learned while doing research for this movie, I came across a really good essay called From the Question of Soul to a Carnival of Souls, the Truncated Road Film, Gothic Automobiles and Dangerous Women Drivers.
Ooh. Sounds like my kind of people.
Written by... Who wrote this? Hold on, I'm finding it. Written by Kimberly Montaigne. This is a very recent essay. I will link to it in the show notes. But one of the interesting things that they talk about is how they're situating this in a number of other movies that feature women driving, and then how these horror movies with women driving sort of reach a detour where they digress into putting the women into sort of gothic spaces that then sort of destroy their autonomy. The notable examples being Psycho, right?
I mean, that can go back even farther. You could make an argument for that. That was relevant in the Southern Gothic genre before that.
Sure. But I mean, I think
A Streetcar Named Desire is almost that exact same plot. Like a woman arriving in a new place to have her autonomy taken away from her. That's literally the plot of that.
yeah. And also like especially in the film adaptation of A Streetcar Named Desire, it's very
Sorry, I'm a big slut for Tennessee Williams.
Tennessee Williams is great. I love that Southern discomfort stuff.
No, that there was a period in high school where I literally just grabbed everything he had ever written and just engorged myself on it.
Didn't he die choking on a bottle cap?
Probably. He's also gay as all hell for as much as you could be back then. But
by the way, that zoom in on the sheet music just after she saw her Carvey out the window is fascinating because it's like, what's the point of the dramatic emphasis on the sheet music? That's what I'm saying. Where like the camera move, there's something poetic about this movie where it makes interesting associations. Where like because of that dramatic zoom in, it now is somehow associating visually her Carvey, Haunting Man, the director, with her sheet music, which is also associated with him before because I don't know if you noticed this when she was driving and she saw him for the first time. She first hears the organ music, the creepy organ music, which becomes non-diegetic sound through the diegetic source of her radio. So they're interacting with one another. The sound becomes a mixture of diegetic and non-diegetic just as the director arrives and then derails her off the road into a sort of like sandbank or whatever. And then we zoom in on the music again when he appears. It's very interesting how it associates all these things in this like very like subtle, moody, poetic way. But the point I was going to say about A Streetcar Named Desire is that I think you could maybe make an argument that at least in the film adaptation, Elia Kazan does a lot to try to make that space of the apartment a little bit more like gothic, a little, there's a lot of like clutter and I won't say like outright expressionistic, but like kind of like chiaroscuro lighting in that movie. I think I think definitely when they arrive at that place visually, she's very trapped, So I think you're right when you say that there's like precedence before this, but definitely with Psycho, I think you look at a shift of emphasis specifically in the horror genre too.
Yes.
Where it's like we're now moving in a direction towards more modern forms of horror.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
And I was just saying you can trace it back farther than just Psycho.
Yeah.
And also it gave me a chance to talk about Tennessee Williams. Which
yeah, I mean, always take your opportunities. That's another fascinating cut because the music, which is her non-diegetic sound, completely cuts out. And then it seems we've passed through an unspoken amount of time. And again, weird poetic associations, the associations of her Carvey's face with like, I don't know who it is specifically in that, stained glass, like diorama or whatever, but like, it's just interesting, his face associated with the face of this kneeling man in the church.
I was telling you as we watched this that I used to date somebody who was super into urban exploring. So I got into that for a little bit too. And unfortunately, it's a bit of a dying art in the United States because they are slowly starting to destroy all of the interesting buildings.
Well, just give it a few years.
Listen, exploring a like defunct Walmart is not nearly as interesting as like going to an old mental hospital that like still has most of the rooms filled.
Just wait until Walmart becomes such a big conglomerate that the mental hospitals are in Walmart.
Maybe. But then we're just going to be scavenging for resources rather than like taking a leisurely stroll and like...
Oh, that was the joke I was trying to make, is that everything is going to be post-apocalyptic nightmare. And then everything's kind of like urban exploring then, if you think about it.
But I was just thinking like how much fucking fun it would be to like... There's this gigantic old carnival grounds Ones that nobody's touched for years.
Ooh.
I love that.
You should go to that abandoned one in New Jersey where they had the people driving through the zoo in their vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
And then they got sued out of existence because you can't have dumb New Jersey people driving through
A zoo.
with like leopards. Not going to work, people.
Hey, you fucking leopard, I'm walking here.
Hey, leopard, you like the boss? That's a fascinating shot, too, with Herc Harvey sitting in the carnival, looking out the window. It's so interesting to me. I love the way this movie plays with that mixture between, like, objective camera and subjective camera, where clearly we are tethered to this character, but it's not... we're not inside Candace Hillegos's head, you know?
Oh. Getting busy with the minister.
Is that the implication? Her acting is so weird that it's like kind of hard to tell.
She's fucking bizarre. I kind of love it.
She's very Lynchian, right?
Yes. But no, I think what it was supposed to be was like the woman's like, "Oh, I went for a drive with my new boss," and then she got an impression in her head, and then she instantly followed up with a minister, and the lady's like, "Oh, okay."
Her performance is almost so weird that you cannot ascribe like cognition to it. It's like, why is she saying that? That's so weird.
I don't know.
Actually, wait a second. You know what I'm realizing? Because her performance in some ways reminds me of the mother from Eraserhead, if less aggressive. You know what I'm realizing, Max? This character, Candace Hillegos, our protagonist, her name is Mary Henry. Our protagonist in Eraserhead is named Henry. And his girlfriend he has the baby with is named Mary.
Okay.
It's just interesting. Clearly, David Lynch loves this movie. I think between this movie and Detour and Experiment in Terror, you've got David Lynch's film influences kind of bottled up right there. That's a good starting point if you want to understand David Lynch. Which, by the way, have you ever seen Experiment in Terror?
I have not, no.
Oh my God. I would love to fucking do that movie. That movie is so fucking good. The movie's directed by Blake Edwards in between Pink Panther movies, which is fucking weird.
Yeah. Oh, look at the guy.
Yeah, I'm John Linden. I'm from across the hall. I couldn't help but notice you were wearing just a towel, so I thought I'd poke my.
I thought I'd
nose in.
physically insert myself into your room.
Yeah, how you doing, babe? He looks like James McAvoy.
How dare you insult James McAvoy like that? This person was like born to play sleazy goon #1 in a movie, and
Yeah, I think James McAvoy would be more insulted to hear you say that he couldn't play sleazy goon #1.
of course he could. But look at this fucking guy. James McAvoy can play whatever he wants, but
Including your cock, is what I'm hearing.
if sure.
Now, Max, if we're talking about moments where the movie's also humorous, I don't know if you noticed it the first time we were watching this. In that moment where he's creepily peeping on her, the organ score simulates a sexy saxophone, where it's like dun-dun-dun-dun, as she's like dropping her robe or whatever. So
Oh
again,
my
very
God.
interesting in its use of music.
Have you ever been like, not this year, obviously, because nobody can do social things,
Right.
but have you ever witnessed men like that who like you see a woman trying to be nice and like they're dropping every hint that they're not into this guy at all, but like,
Yeah.
they refuse to get it.
Well, it is that weird thing where it's like certain men.
You
Like-
can't tell if it's like intentional or they're just like,
Well, I think I don't know if it's intentional. Like just men. A lot of men are like seemingly incapable of like ever assuming that they're intruding, you know? So it's like, oh God, it's Sir Carvey. Talk about chiaroscuro lighting, by the way. Damn. Because this boarding house just got a little bit creepy.
and it's been very well lit and almost
Yeah.
a comforting place this entire time.
I mean, that is like breaking your suspension of disbelief where it's like, why is it lit that way? The darkness when he's sitting in that
Yes,
chair
but
is totally unmotivated.
You're not thinking about that in the split second where it happens.
No, but it is very conspicuous.
Yes.
That's why this essay talking about like her moving into a gothic space, it's like, yes, because that lighting is gothic as fuck. That's not what a road movie is. But men who don't really. I think what it is like women seem like there's a pattern of behavior where women will like rebuff men's advances, but they will try to be nice about it. But a lot of men seem to misrecognize that as like,
oh, I'm in.
Yes.
Or
like, I've got to keep going.
Yeah, I've had the last time this happened, like this guy who was like in his like mid 50s or something was at a dive bar, and like people love playing darts there, so he got on a darts team with these two girls. And he started getting like too comfortable with one. They ended up winning their darts match, and I missed whatever happened in the middle of that, but I just like fast forward to the end of the evening when the bar is clearing out, and he's just like drunkenly like following these girls of just like, I played darts with you.
Oh.
And the girl's just like, yeah, I know, but like it's over now. And it got to the point where my buddy and I like needed to step in between this fucking 55-year-old man and be like, listen, dude, you're done. She's not into you. But, oh my God.
What about teamwork? What about cooperation? Do you not realize what we accomplished? We played we won darts. Don't you understand what that
means? You're giving him way too much credit for how coherent he was at the time.
But no, I do think it's interesting how, like, this movie, she's rebuffing him, and he always sees it as the invitation to keep going,
And unfortunately, because she's incapable of saying no throughout this entire movie, it like does put her in increasingly.
See, I don't think it's so much that she's incapable of saying no. It's just that she's
incapable because of her circumstances.
Yeah, she becomes horrified, and then she's like, I just don't want to be alone. And the moment she is not accepting him into her like space in order to please his sexual desire, the moment he realizes she's not letting him interact with her to gratify his own sexual desire, he's like, I don't need a broad who's crazy. This is the last thing I need to get caught up with. To be fair, she is kind of having a meltdown at that point for real, but she is never anything more than a receptacle for his own desire to him. Ooh, the organ music.
After Spooktober, sorry, now I'm thinking about Tennessee Williams. We should do a Streetcar Named Desire on the podcast at some point.
Do we want to?
Yes.
I guess we could.
What, do you think that movie's too good for us?
No, I hate Elia Kazan.
Okay.
You should too.
Yeah.
He fucking pointed fingers to HUAC. He's the reason we had the fucking Hollywood blacklist.
Okay.
He's not a good person.
Well, that might be an interesting thing to talk about.
I guess. Yeah. Just talk about all the fucking people he pointed fingers at. Shitty bastard. I used to follow his granddaughter on Twitter. And then, I don't know, just the way she I know she must get a ton of shit for that, which is sort of unfortunate, but also the way she not defends him, but speaks about it too, is something about it is you also don't appreciate this. I mean, he went out of his way to do it. It's what the fuck is this? In fact, if I remember correctly, Edgar G. Ulmer, the director of Detour, is one of the people he pointed fingers at.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we're back to Detour. Took a detour to get to Detour.
Yes. No alcohol in my coffee. No, thank you.
They pay somebody? Yeah, I was gonna say that's something that caught me off guard in this movie because like shocker to a listener. So I'm not a very religious person, but every time I have been to a church, like the organist is always just like some old lady who volunteers to do that because they don't know, like they don't have anything better to do at the time. I'm just like, wait, people pay?
Find the one old lady that does not have arthritis,
Yeah,
and they will play our
the
organ.
one lady who played piano in her college years, and she can play the organ for us,
I'm playing chapsticks.
basically.
What do you think of something about this scene is so weird to me with the placement of his arm? Something, it's just jutting into the frame. It's so weird. It's one of those things that's like David Lynch.
No, I think that's very much intentional.
I mean, it's intentional, but it's like so intrusive and weird.
Well, yeah, no, it's like she's trying to have her own space on the side of the couch, but he's
Yeah.
just like, nope.
He's just making a fist literally and punching into her bubble. And this scenes like this are really where the editing is very conspicuous to me. Obviously, it's conspicuous when we do those sort of attention grabbing, match cuts that have a lot of associative power in them. But also, like, this is just a standard scene. It's the same sort of setup and syntax that we're used to from a camera standpoint, where we got the shot, reverse shot, we got the master shot, where these two people are talking. But the way it cuts between them is very peculiar. And the rhythm that it builds and the decision of when they want to cut is like very interesting. And also the way, we do the framing where it's like, middle of the frame, which is not normally how you would do this. Normally you would want to make it a little bit more seamless by having a little bit of more of older over the shoulder stuff going on. Right. But middle of the frame, you're like really emphasizing the like apartness of this, and you are emphasizing the placement of the camera as an objective observer if you're really going for middle of the frame stuff.
Oh God.
Because it's like you're putting this situation and these people like up on a slab if they're in the middle of the frame.
Get the fuck out of my room now.
I mean, to be fair, she's been very cordial to him
She has.
now. But again, it is the situation where she just really more sternly rebuked him the night previously, and he shows up the morning, and I'm sure she wants to begin the day on a nice moment, so she'll accept some coffee, but also like she's being nice to him to try to be neighborly, not
Yeah, like, okay, I gave you a stern answer last night. Let's see if we can redefine our relationship as, okay, we live in the house. I'll share coffee with you. That's fine. But it's still like that. I know that's the purpose of the character.
Yeah,
but
she's setting a tone for the day. Like she's like, yes, I had some coffee with my neighbor. He's a little bit too pushy, but it was still nice because I don't know anyone here. And now I'm going shopping and I'm going to get a nice dress, She's got the whole day off. She's trying to just ride the wave.
Yeah.
And it's going to be horrifyingly interrupted here. But that interesting conversation, though, their conversation on the couch, because you have such weird bits of dialogue that are kind of like what you would expect for that, but not really what you would expect, where he starts talking about like principal products, right? This is where the Marxism comes in, like really hitting you in the face. It's like, that's not something anyone talks about in school. They're going to quiz you on principal products of Brazil. That's fucking weird. But it does speak to school as like a job training service in the US very explicitly, and perhaps more so than many other countries. The idea of schools being job training that you pay for. And relates to her working as an organ player, and her emphasis on it being just a job for her is very conspicuous as well, compared to being like spiritually invested in being a church organist. And the idea of, again, planting the seed of the road being this thing that's leading to a career, of being to, upwards advancement. I also find it very interesting that the first moment of total alienation, where she's completely suffering under the surreal dehumanization of being kind of invisible to other people, is experienced in a department store where she's shopping for clothes. Which, of course, you know, being a woman has a very specific context to that, especially in how it relates to women as aestheticized objects, women as limited in their autonomy by men specifically, and women in their limited capacity as wage earners.
Huh. Austin, if you die, what's your purgatory going to be?
I have no idea. Probably something not too similar. Or well, purgatory or hell?
Purgatory.
Okay.
Not the worst possible thing, but like enough of a punishment.
See, I don't view purgatory as a punishment.
Okay, you're Catholic, so you can explain this to me more than I can.
So, it's not. I don't even think of purgatory along like specifically Catholic lines, though. I think of purgatory often in the way that Dante writes about purgatory, where, you know, in college I spent a decent amount of time studying Dante.
Where all the unbaptized babies go to hang out. But
no, that's in hell. But it's a nice part of hell, but it's like unsatisfying. Purgatory remains ultimately a satisfying place because it has this promise of mobility, right?
It's a waiting room.
Yes, but it's not really a waiting room. You're doing work, but it's like a classroom. It's, you know, broad metaphor here. But purgatory, in the cosmology of Dante, what happens is God casts Satan out of heaven, right? And he goes so far into the earth that he lands at Earth's core. And that's the core of hell, right? So it's this giant hole. But also when that happens, it displaces land on the other side of the planet. So when Satan lands in hell, on the opposite side of the planet, a giant mountain sprouts up, and that's what purgatory is. You're climbing this mountain stage by stage, and eventually you will get to heaven. So purgatory, like, is not nearly as bad as hell because you have mobility, whereas hell, it's complete stasis, no mobility whatsoever.
Yo, dude, let her go.
You're hysterical, woman.
Oh my God.
Talk about some of the more campy comedy here again. I think the delivery of the man who's like, I just wanted a drink of water is very funny to me.
Just reminds me of the fucking
He looks like a Lynch character actor.
airplane gag of just like, calm down. And you have the line of people getting ready to like slap the woman with increasingly worse weapons.
Yes. I mean, this man is very like campy funny because it's like, I just wanted a glass of water. I didn't mean it, nothing by it.
That's my favorite Utah accent.
Water.
Sound like fucking Boomhauer from King of the Hill.
But also the fact of her taking the word of this man who we learn later on in this scene is not actually a psychiatrist, but perhaps a doctor of dentistry. This cut is weird. This close-up of the chair is so fucking weird. I don't know what it is.
It sets the tone for later, though.
It does. But I think this moment where he like just seizes her and is like, hysteria! Stop fighting, woman. That's also hilarious.
So it's his diagnosis basically is like, you're a woman.
And he has
Sorry.
do you see what he has on his desk? He has a oh God, how am I forgetting this? Look.
Oh, yes.
He's got a pipe holder thing. It almost looks like a billiards pole rack, except for all
I was
his
going to
pipes.
say, he's a shitty dentist if he just has pipes ready to use.
What the fuck is he a doctor of? Because he's like, oh, I'm not a psychiatrist.
He's going to be a foot doctor.
Ooh. Oh, let's not talk about that.
So how high do you think the number of foot doctors have foot fetishes? It's like 90% or like...
Nah, because that would ruin it for you. Because you would see all sorts of shit on people's feet and you're like, ugh. Now, Max, this seems like a good time to bring something up. Concept we've brought up in the past, but never really gone out of our way to define.
Oh boy.
The concept of the uncanny.
Oh, Austin loves this, listeners. You're about to get the best explanation of your life.
I may or may not use a quote from this book. The book I'm holding right now is The Horror Film by Peter Hutchings. A great critical introduction to horror movies. But the uncanny is a theory, a concept that was originally pioneered by Freud. And it's a little bit messy because Freud wrote about it and then kind of lost interest in it a little bit and did not delve into fleshing out this idea. So it's a little bit messy. But the uncanny is basically something talked about often in horror movies. And it essentially refers to the idea of something being alienating and vaguely upsetting to you despite being familiar. So the idea is, like most in horror movies, most ultimately captured by body snatchers. You know, the body snatchers are uncanny because it's like they look and sound and act so much like my husband, but that's not my husband, you know? And the same thing happens in that movie, specifically the 70s one I'm thinking of, where Leonard Nimoy tells a woman to her face that she's being hysterical, right, instead of listening to her, because it's like, that's not my husband. But it's like, oh, they're an exact copy of your husband, but it's like, that's not. And that's why it's uncanny, because it's the strange and bizarre present in and mixed with the familiar. But the uncanny is also more broad than that. Really, uncanny in English is not a good term for it, because in German it's unheimlich, which also means unhomely, which has connotations of like place and also like an idea of safety. And Freud was talking about it more in terms of like giving power to things like idols, where it's like, for him, unheimlich also refers to the idea of like superstition, where it's like, I do this or that, and it means this or that, right? Where it's like kind of building up paranoid belief through the overestimation of like the importance of your own behavior. You know? If you're watching sports and you sit in a specific chair, that means they win, right? But it's like, no, you don't do shit. It doesn't matter. It's just pure superstition, right? So uncanniness also refers to things like conspiracy theories. Or the idea that people are talking about you behind your back, right? Because it's like, no, they don't care about you. It's just your own paranoia and the overestimation of yourself within the world that is leading you to speculate about these things. The other neat thing about unheimlich as a German word compared to English is I think this is pure coincidence, but it's almost, you can think of the idea of the Heimlich maneuver, the idea of like something from inside getting coughed up.
I had been biting my tongue literally the entire time.
I think it's totally unrelated.
It is a very common German last name, to be fair. But.
Sure, but like it's almost like unheimlich connotates something of like the unsecret. So it's like a secret that's trying to be kept, but slips out in one moment. And now the tether is, you're pulling on this thread and you're like, something's weird about this situation. And everything around you becomes weird. David Lynch's movies, we've been comparing this to his movies a lot, but they're very uncanny because they have that weird stilted acting, right? And you're like, this is sort of how people act, but not really, right? And then a similar thing happening in this movie with his own stilted acting. But what that doctor is talking about is very much that idea of the uncanny. And I think I'll just quote this in the show notes from this book, but it's a kind of tricky critical concept, but it's like what she's experiencing right now, Candace Hilligoss, is very much like an epitome of uncanniness, because in everything she experiences, there's this secret of her own death that she must unravel, but it is expressing itself in other ways, because in to use psychoanalytic terminology, she cannot successfully repress her own death. Will express itself through symptoms in the world, right? Because the symptom is failed repression of the trauma.
Okay. I had another thing related to what you were talking about I wanted to bring up, but
what?
Never mind. It's not.
No, go for it.
It's not relevant to the movie at all.
shoot your shot.
No, because you were just talking about the idea of the uncanny,
Yeah.
and reminded me of the idea of the uncanny valley and how like things that look like human faces but are a bit off, like evoke a primal.
That's totally the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but they evoke a primal fear in people, and somebody's just like, "Oh, I saw something going around on the internet recently. Like that means it's hard coded into our genes that like something that's almost human but not quite. It was beneficial for us to be afraid of that. What the fuck was that?" And I'm just like, Neanderthals. We know that.
Sure. I mean, here's the interesting thing about you saying that. In Freud's writing on the uncanny, where he's really pioneering this stuff, he actually uses it. He develops the idea along with a lot of his other thoughts by using literary reference points, where he writes about this story by E.T.A. Hoffman called The Sandman, I believe is the one. But E.T.A. Hoffman, one of his motifs that he was very good at using was this idea of the automaton, right, Max?
Yeah.
And thinking of Uncanny Valley CGI creations is kind of like automaton-like, where it's like, why did clowns creep us out? We talked about this in Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's kind of like that uncanniness, where it's like you're pretending to be a person and you're pretending to be a really happy person, but you're trying a little bit too hard and now it's not working, and you trying is creeping me out.
And just like a lot of things people are scared of, there's a certain amount of humans who want to fuck them.
We didn't talk about that in Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
It is relevant to Neanderthals because the predominant theory is that Homo sapiens didn't actually kill them.
Or they fucked them into oblivion.
We fucked them out of existence, literally.
There you go. That's a...
We still have 2% of Neanderthal DNA in us.
There you go. No, I thought you were about to connect like Neanderthal clowns. It's like that's why humans got rid of them.
The ultimate fear.
They were like Neanderthals and clowns. We got to get rid of these guys.
One or the other.
We are done. Period.
Oh god. Now Neanderthals, like for the while, were one of the things that scientists weren't entirely sure why they went extinct, because they were just like better suited for their environment than they should have been.
Right.
Like cave bears used to be, where it's just like, no, they were ahead of humans on the food chain, and there's really no reason they should have gone extinct, but they just did.
It makes me sad.
There's so many animals.
We talk about this a lot, where it's like we're both mourn the fact that there's less megafauna.
Yeah.
We're always like, oh, it would have been great to still have that North American camel.
I want to see the fucking 8-foot-long beaver. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Oh, horror movies would be so much more fun if you had like ground sloths still. It would just be like, oh, this is great.
Just Jurassic Park with the Ice Age instead.
Not even, because like it's just still be alive, But also like I don't know. Then it'd be sad because then we'd have to put up with the great horror of seeing all these majestic creatures come to the end of the line during our own lifetimes with our climate apocalypse. And it's like,
well, we're going to anyway.
So. Yeah. But can you imagine seeing a ground sloth and just knowing, nope, the last one is gone, and you're like, that is just destroy me.
We might live to see that with like pandas and stuff.
We will.
Yeah, depends on what the Chinese government has to say about it. But
you know what? Yeah, this is something we've talked about a lot off mic, and I guess it kind of relates to the episode in terms of talking about Marxism and stuff. But like, the term "tanky" has been ruined because liberals have started using it the last few months.
When liberals discover anything in leftist discourse, it automatically
ruined. And
same thing happened with Karen.
Yeah, now it's like...
Now I can't use the word Karen because people started using it to refer to any white woman, and then feminists started saying it was turning into a slur, and now I'm just like, okay it's not worth saying anymore.
But the thing about tankies, too, is like, for us talking about tankies, this used to have a useful connotation about discussing people who are like stupidly interested in China. But now it's just like, the people who defend China, they're still more in the right than people who use the propaganda shit, And it's like, I'm sorry, now I have to side with these people that I disagree with because, like, at least they're more right than you.
But at the same time, like,
you stupid liberals who are like
the people who praise modern day China as like a great example of communism, like,
right,
you're doing some cognitive dissonance there, buddy. But
you know what? They're like, they improve the quality of life for their citizens much more than the U.S.?
No,
I think the thing that you and I really fall on is like we see them more as like a far more effective form of capitalism.
no, it's authoritarian
Yeah.
capitalism.
Through-
It's taking the state control
Yeah.
of Soviet bloc era communism and the quality of life improvements that a lot of Western capitalist countries have seen.
But the authoritarianism makes this quality of life improvements far more effective.
Yes, because you have state control and business planning. So you can be like, yeah, there's only one party, but we know we're going to be in power 30 years from now, so we can get long-term planning done.
Yeah. And in that sense, it does actually genuinely lead to quality of life improvement
No,
in impressive ways that America could never accomplish. But
no, more people have
Yeah.
been lifted out of poverty in China than live in the U.S. currently.
yeah,
So,
it's really amazing if you think about it, but that doesn't change that it's
no,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Whenever you praise a country that does terrible things, people are like, oh, well, does that... No,
No.
it doesn't. But that doesn't mean we can just be like, oh, well, I guess America's doing it the best, because
Yeah.
we sure as hell are fucking not.
But this is the conversation that's complicated by liberals having the term tanky, because it just ruins it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I know I can speak for both of us when I say like we're on the tanky side against you liberals because you guys are wrong.
Yeah, but also fuck tankies.
Yes.
I'm just going to alienate all of our left-leaning audience here. Fuck you liberals and fuck you tankies.
You're going to get called an anarchist.
Yeah.
You're going to get
No.
called a virgin anarchist.
No, I have an anarchist friend, and we always joke that we're going to be friends until the revolution's over. But,
And then it's done.
yeah.
We just talked over a wonderful sequence where
Sacrilege.
priest man chastises her and then fires her. Her job is over now. Goodbye. Now she's just almost entirely catatonic, seeming with her beautiful big eyes. God, Candace Hilgoss is so expressive. I think
I said she carries this fucking movie. Her
Yeah.
performance is amazing.
It reminds me a lot of Catherine Deneuve in something like Repulsion, although I think Candace Hilgoss's performance is superior to Catherine Deneuve's in that movie. She studied with Strasberg, I believe. But much like
Dude, you just fired her for playing a fucking song on the organ. Like,
sacrilege.
and it didn't sound particularly evil.
No, it was just kind of noise.
Yeah.
Discordant noise. But what was I going to say? Unfortunately, much like the director Herc Harvey, Candace Hilgoss seems to have been a kind of a one-hit wonder in film. I don't know if she had a career in theater or stuff like that, but she did this movie and I think one other, and then that was it. And Herc Harvey literally only directed this movie as a feature film, and that was it.
Oh my god. Everybody in the background.
You're talking about the people in the background. That's yet another sort of poetic associative element in this, where we see all the undead sort of demon people sort of dancing together as in a sort of like whirling dervish sort of way, and then it sort of connects this idea of the man seeking her out, also being aggressive, and
That's the best line in the movie. I don't care.
what?
I not only do I drink really, I
Oh, yeah.
really drink.
Yes. Talking about like funny campy lines.
Well, just like in the context of that character, because he's not presented as a clever guy at all.
Right.
So you had to use that line plenty of times.
Yes. Not only do I drink really well, or really drink, yeah.
It's
That's what I say.
It's like me at my job. I have like the same 5 like jokes that I use with customers every single fucking day. And every time I'm like, customers like, oh, you're quick-witted. I'm like, no, I just have lots of practice. I run into these same fucking scenarios every day.
You're not special. You say the same thing every other customer says. But yeah, I guess the thing I just wanted to mention is that interesting, again, associative power that comes with the similarities here, right? You have the match cut again from that sequence where the man approaches her, then match cuts to the priest's hands, grasping hers, regulating her personal expression of her own trauma, right? And again, if you look at you connect the dancing in that sequence to the dancing in this sequence, and the undead man, Herc Harvey, sort of pursuing her in a way you might compare to this man pursuing her. All different expressions of something similar, you know? That's the other fascinating thing about this movie is how it emphasizes technological things that play music.
Yes.
There's lots of close-ups of like radios or jukeboxes and stuff.
Her face is just like, oh my God. You just feel so like it really communicates I need to be somewhere else right now, but like I'm not having a good time. Like
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Her performance is fascinating.
It like almost triggers an anxiety attack of just like, I need to get out of this place. And like,
yeah.
having the background and any exits blocked off by these like dancing couples trying to force her into the same situation that like she doesn't want to be in with this guy.
Yeah.
It's, oh my God, what a masterful frame right there.
Yeah, because it's like, her performance is so weird because she is kind of playing catatonic in the sense that there's a certain blankness. She's not playing like a discrete, identifiable emotion in every single moment, you know? But there is like just an unspoken, vague, in sometimes like very potent, despite being vague, uneasiness and discomfort that she plays moment to moment. And it's like, there's really nothing going on in her mind, I feel, other than just trying to process her own unease, which really, when you say process, it's not even like she's intellectualizing it. It's just like she's just trying to like emotionally register what is happening, because really there's no way to like intellectually process what's happening to her other than just assuming that you're going mad, right? And having no idea what to do about it.
Oh my God.
And it is through her performance of that, how this movie communicates like a lot of its tone and loneliness of her character. She's very alone despite everything. No one can help her. In some ways, it kind of reminds me, it's like a missing great performance from like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. There's certain similarities to that, I feel, where it's like Nightmare on Elm Street, a lot of those characters are in situations where it's like they can't say what is wrong with them, except they don't want to be alone. You know, because it's like no one will understand. Why would I even begin to explain what is happening to me to someone who isn't experiencing it? Because who the fuck would understand or believe or even grasp how to like help me in this situation? So it doesn't matter if I try to explain. So let's talk about something else in this movie that's very interesting. Let's talk about her eschewing of desire. Her non-reciprocal stance to the advances of men, be it this man or the other sort of authority figures who are sort of trying to worm their way into regulating her behavior. She is constantly told to put her soul into her organ playing for church. And the fact that it's just a job for her is like, oh, that's not the attitude to take into church work, right? Oh, well, this is super creepy. Yeah. But the idea that she does not reciprocate the desire of men who seem to like want to worm their way into her life somehow, is seen. They see that as disruptive. But in some ways, like something that is mentioned in that essay I mentioned in the introduction about spectral incognizance is how they pick up on a pattern of like women not reciprocating a type of sexual desire in these stories, and how it's sort of associated with a type of like non-linearity or certain like propensity for digression from linear storytelling, somehow linked to that lack of linear desire. Because often something that's talked about a lot in like narratology, especially like psychoanalytic discussions of narratives, is how like desire is a thing that like kicks off a narrative. It's what gives you momentum. going from one scene to the next. The characters have to want a thing, right? And we're engaged in a story in the same sense. If we follow through with our own desire, we have to want to watch,
Just
see what happens.
Just a small narrative detail I'm thinking about now. When she was at this doctor's office earlier,
Yeah.
she said that she never wanted to be close to people. She's never felt the desire to be before.
Yep.
But we're introduced to her at the beginning of the film, before she dies, in a car, apparently on a road trip with friends. Is that like...
I didn't get it was a road trip.
That's what I was sort of... You have three girls in the same car looking like they're having fun, trying to race a guy.
This is weird. You know where they are in the beginning? They don't mention it really, but you know where they are? Kansas.
Ah. You're not in Kansas anymore.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but I was thinking of more like... is that like just a like more of her rejection of reality of what happened to her?
The coldness that she
toward
sort of,
others
yeah.
because her friends died, and she's just like, no, I've never been close with anybody. What are you talking about?
I don't know.
No, it's just something that caught me on this viewing.
See, I think the thing is like, for me, I read it as like she wants something beyond. I think it's okay that it leaves it sort of more unspoken, but like she just wants to go her own. She wants her own autonomy, and that does not mean men,
Yes.
right? But she's not allowed.
Or she could be gay.
She could be. I think that's more plausible than her being straight, but I don't think it gives any hint to her being gay because she
No.
also, yeah.
This is also a movie made in the 60s, so
Yeah.
let's be...
But I mean, you're talking about movies made in the 60s. Another movie made in the 60s that is also mentioned in the essay about Gothicism and like detoured road movies is The Haunting, which is based on The Haunting of Hill House. Now, The Haunting itself has a little bit less of this subtext, despite being also a good spooky movie. But that also has driving sequences of Eleanor, driving away from her home and regulation by her nasty sister. And that has a much stronger sense of like repressed sexuality and homosexual elements to it, where she meets a very lively woman named Theodora, and they start, rooming together in the haunted house or whatever, right? So I don't know if it was so much the 60s, but I do think this movie definitely has her rebuke men, but does not specifically say that she might be gay in any clear terms.
Listen, as somebody who grew up with having to basically like invent queer characters in shows because there were none, you kids these days have it easy. They're putting queer folk in all sorts of television and movies now. But
I think that is a conversation that deserves to be had more about like, the canon and how easy it is for people to cancel things, where like a lot of queer criticism and feminist criticism was like reading in their place into books that were not like specifically about them, but they still found themselves in.
yeah,
And that's not always specifically like a totally negative thing.
no, and the authors and like even actors' response to that can be incredibly telling.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's just use two big franchises
Okay.
as an example. There was an interview with Mark Hamill where he was talking about
Star Wars?
Yes,
Okay.
where he was talking about where this teenage kid came up to him, 14-year-old boy,
Right.
and like said at like a convention, but it was like a signing where you'd go in a room and you'd talk with him, he'd sign something, and then you'd leave. But the kid like apparently just like broke down in front of him. It's just like I always viewed Luke as gay, and like it helped me get through when things weren't good at home.
That's honestly incredible.
And I
Yeah.
just wanted to like ask if that's okay. And Mark Hamill's just like, if that's of course it's okay. What are you talking about? And then you have, for another big franchise, you have J.K. Rowling, who has decided to use her platform not only to absolutely say that no,
Yeah.
these characters are not gay. How dare you?
Or like make them gay in a queer baiting,
yeah,
dumb, exploitative way. right? That's honestly a great comparison. And honestly, if I was to make any work of art, that's like the dream, as long as it's not Nazis taking your thing, which if they are, maybe that's its own problem. I do not think that
I haven't seen that documentary about the guy who made the Pepe the Frog meme.
I don't think that's worth it because it's also being reclaimed by people on Twitch at this point too. That's like less of a specifically alt-right thing now.
Well, yeah, when even that's the thing. The alt-right, gotta feel for the alt-right right now. They have no more signifiers to use.
That's
When even SNL is picking up on your OK signs, you can't use that anymore.
Well, the one I always think of is The Matrix, because that is one that is so explicitly not what these dumbass alt-right people
These
think it
fucking
is.
trans sisters are being like, what the
Yes.
fuck do you think our movie is?
How stupid are you?
Did you see Keanu Reeves' response to that?
What?
Where, because the Wachowskis officially came out recently and said that The Matrix, to them, was a story about coming to terms with being trans.
Of course it is.
Yeah, but Keanu Reeves is like, well, I didn't know that, but that's pretty cool. Which is the most fucking Keanu Reeves thing to say.
Keanu Reeves knew that. But I think Keanu Reeves respects filmmakers too much to like really give his own interpretations of stuff like that in a specific way. Keanu Reeves is a smart guy. He understood.
Oh my god, there was one interview with him recently to promote that new Bill and Ted movie.
Yeah.
Where it's like this young 20-somethings interviewer who's just like, so did it take you a while to get back in the headspace to play Bill? And Keanu Reeves is like,
No.
I play Ted. And the guy's just like, oh, fuck. Keanu Reeves is like, yeah, you just kind of blew all your credibility there, man.
That's great. Love him. The internet's adoration of him still can't ruin him.
No, that's the only one where I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It's because he's more zen and cool than people even understand. I'm genuinely excited for Matrix 4 because the Wachowskis they refuse to.
They try.
They refuse to not make things that are fucking weird.
I thought Cloud Atlas was okay. God, we're at a Rob Zombie concert.
Yes. So we've been talking over all of this.
Yes, we are.
One thing I wanted to mention as she was pulling into the repair area, auto repair, a place you're intimately familiar with.
Repair implies that the cars are savable.
But there's a repeated imagery of men in blue collar jobs in this. Right at the beginning, we see the people making the organs in the organ shop. Then we see that her neighbor works in a factory.
Well, those are all the men that, one, technically killed her, and two, were crowding around after she died. So that's what I always took it as.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's what you thought? I don't know. It could be both. You see the men when in sort of cinema verite type shots, kind of drilling away, doing sidewalk repair stuff. And then you see the men in the auto shop. And it's very interesting to me that there's this repeated motif of men at work, which I feel like it again speaks to the type of Marxist edge of this movie where it's her labor, Marx.
That cop can see her. He's just being a regular cop.
He's the only one. Where an idea Marx has talked about, this idea of dead labor, the idea of alienation from your labor being something that kind of steals one's soul and steals one's autonomy and connection to their own work in a spiritual or even social way. His idea of work being fundamentally antisocial in the sense that it is antisocial to you, the laborer, right?
Well, that's sort of, I mean, that goes on to his idea of commodity fetishism as well.
Yeah.
Where rather than connect to your fellow man, you have to connect to commodities because we're separated from our fellow man.
And also the idea that or even our connection to the commodities is severed because we have no appreciation for the true production of commodities. We just see the end result, which is how, again, they can charge tons of money for clothes that are just 2 strands of fabric because it's yeah, but you're paying for the fetish that is this commodity.
The prestige.
Yeah, not how much labor was actually put into this, right? Despite the fact that it is obviously not the non-psychiatrist, this still remains creepy to me. Again, I think it's the editing and just the way the shot is set up. It's like, you know it's going to be her Carvey, but it still somehow is creepy.
Hey, it's me.
And the weird thing is that he turns around and it's almost like funny because he's like, but he does it so slowly that it kind of, you're shocked maybe at the beginning, but it's like, then it kind of diffuses the scare, you know?
I don't know about that. It's just sort of like, I wouldn't say diffuses. I would have said it almost maintains it, honestly.
Yeah, well, it's like it gives you space for multiple different emotional instincts. Where it's like,
It doesn't give you time to process it. So like by the time this scene happens, which is like, okay, she's pulling out of the driveway, you're still like, ah.
right. It's just all the timing is so weird in this.
And she's reverting back to the state that she was when she died.
What do you mean?
Just sort of like the dazed, dirty dress, walking barefoot.
That's interesting because I think at the end of the movie, she ends in different clothes when they pull them up out of the bridge, out of the thing. That's the thing. You know that she's in the real world because we see things beyond her perspective where like the priest and the other people find her body, or they don't find her body. They see the footprints, right? And then they just disappear. Then when they pull her out, I think she is wearing different clothes than she was originally. Weird, right? Somehow this actually happened. But yeah, I guess one other point I wanted to make too about the idea of labor in this country, and again relating it to that idea of the road movie, the American Dream. I think you could very easily argue that like labor is like a type of religion in this country, and it is not a forgiving religion. If you do not succeed, it is your fault. You did not work hard enough, right? Because that's just the mythos of America. You come here, you can work, classes don't exist, everyone is a pure individual, and
wealth is a bloom in America.
yes,
Wealth in a room in America.
absolutely, yes. So you have that rugged individualism spirit where it's like, oh, we're all responsible for our own fate, and no one can stop us when we work hard. Nothing obstructing us from accomplishing whatever we want. We just have to choose to do it. So again, labor is, in many ways, in the U.S., is and has been a type of religion, which is how, people like Donald Trump get elected.
So what we're saying is go read Marx, everybody. That's the message of, honestly, you could skip all of our podcasts. That's how they're all going to end.
And by the way, let's settle that dumb Twitter debate that has been going on and off during quarantine. Read Marx, you fucking losers.
Yes,
people...
yes, Capital gets dense at some points, but after you get past the first like 150, 200 pages, it gets to the real good stuff.
Yeah, abandon the liberal brain that's like old dead white man. Because that is really not what the situation is.
Well, and also like, yes, he was, but also Marx can be your introduction to the ideas. Just make sure he's not your last.
Well, also, yeah.
And people have been updating his theories for over a century.
Marxism is a tradition dominated by people of color, dominated by non-white people.
By queer people, by Jewish people.
By women.
Yes.
Marx was Jewish, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So,
although he did have a bit of a anti-Semitic stint, which still haunts his legacy to this day. But to be fair, he was responding to somebody who wanted to get Jews out of Germany. And his response basically amounted to like, oh, well, ideally we can erase religion and nationality so we can eradicate the Jews that way rather than the actual people. But it's the pamphlet itself is not a good look.
I mean, still though, it's like hardly like, come on, people, read Marx. Read Marx.
And after that, read Lenin and read more. Just keep going.
And that's the most irritating thing about these Twitter debates about who to read. It's like, you fucking people don't read anything. Shut up. If you were interested in reading, you would just say, give me them all.
Read a different book besides Harry Potter.
Yes, that's the real thing. Begging you people to read a different book.
That's the
begging.
thing. Of like
tears in my eyes begging.
Like I can understand like diehard Harry Potter fans like a couple months ago before J.K. Rowling like assumed her final turf form. But of just being like, oh, well, the book's meant a lot to me, and I don't think she really means it. I think she's just older and outdated. But, like, when the chick comes out with a book of, like, her paranoid fantasies of what trans women are doing, like...
Yeah, it's like Dressed to Kill on steroids. It's like, what the fuck is going on? Also, those books suck ass. I'm sorry. I guess we're just angering everyone on this episode. Except for fans of Carnival of Souls.
No, they're probably... pissed off too because we stopped talking about the movie.
Oh, they're pissed off we did this because they're like, God damn it, these assholes are doing a disservice to this movie.
Austin tricked me into doing this movie. I asked him if we could do Devil's Carnival, and he's like, well, the movie has carnival in the title, and I'm like, okay.
Pulled a fast one on you. Is this guy? He's just like, well, I shat myself. What are we here talking about? This might be reading into it too much, Max. Oh, that's fucking beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
Imagine just being able to walk through that.
Oh,
nobody disturbing you, just being...
That was their thought. They're like, we got to make a movie here. I'm so glad they did. I love that they did this. It's so sad that Herc Harvey never got a chance to do another movie. But this might be reading into things a little bit too much, Max. When I think of Utah, what do you think of?
Mormons.
Yes.
Sand.
Mormons, though. I always think about Mormons as being like, they have like, Mormons are like the ultimate, are like the final form of American. You know what I mean? Where it's like they entirely retool Christian.
Oh, by the way, the movie's over.
Oh, the movie's over. I'm going to keep talking about this though. Mormons kind of like retool Christianity to completely conform to like white American values.
Oh no, one of my favorite experiences was I had the first time I met my friend who lives in Ireland. They were an exchange student at my college.
Yeah.
And trying to explain, because they were raised Catholic,
right?
Because Ireland's a very Catholic nation.
Yes.
But trying to explain the Amish and the Mormons to them, they were like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Because also, I should premise this by saying, like, I think you and I, not being religious people, we kind of look at Mormons as like a different form of Scientology because it was reverse engineered to suit these people's needs. Joe Smith was like huckster in our eyes. I'm sorry if you're Mormon. This is just our perspective.
The Mormons gave us the Killers, so I'm
okay.
I'm okay. They've paid their debt to society for
but
now.
I find the Mormons more intimidating than Scientology by far. But Mormonism,
no.
The Mormons have discipline. They're going to take over the country. They have so much money. It's crazy. But basically, my point in bringing all this up is I see Mormonism as a type of like the ultimate evolution of America as a religion, where it's like, you know, Jesus came to America, right? and this is what happened.
Jews built boats and sailed.
Yes, but white Jews.
Yes.
And
those Native Americans showed up somehow afterwards and
yes,
murdered them because the Native Americans are bad because we need to justify killing them because all the other states keep kicking us out, so we need to have a place for our own.
Also, you do not go to heaven to become like this stagnant place where you spend all eternity.
No, you get your own planet.
You become God.
Yes.
Yes. So it's, in my mind, it's like this weird poetic like retelling of like the American mythos, the American dream.
Our thing is great because our country was literally chosen by God.
Yes.
And not only are we the only true Christians, that we get to become God when we die.
Yes.
Which is why they're so smug whenever you make fun of their religion. Because
yes.
Like, I don't care. I get to become a God when I die.
Yep. And they go to Utah in a vicious pilgrimage, terribly trying, right? And
Also, go watch the Book of Mormon if you ever get a chance to
Sure.
see it off Broadway. As having seen it, it is 100% worth it.
But like, it's the perfect combination of that Manifest Destiny, American Dream mythos with colonization and a literal westward journey going to Utah.
Yes.
And like, also to the point of like, they tried to make their dreams become a reality on Earth. I don't know if people know this. If we somehow avoided the Civil War in the U.S., we almost certainly would have gone to war with the Mormons in Utah, who were trying to secede entirely and make their own state. Brigham Young.
Well, to give the Mormons the slightest bit of credit, they were getting killed wherever they went because people
Sure. But also they were like
insane.
Yes.
But also, we should probably, wrap up this episode.
Yes.
If you want to hear us rant more about Mormonism, you should check out more episodes of the Spectator Film Podcast. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. You should also check out all of our various social media. Just search Spectator Film Podcast on your favorite social media thing, and you should probably find us.
Except for Letterboxd, where I think we are Spectator Film.
Okay.
And favorite social media does not include Facebook. We are on Twitter.
I said favorite social media, not...
Oh, yeah. And if your favorite is Facebook, what the fuck is wrong
You're
with
probably
you?
70 and not listening to our podcast.
Yeah. But yeah, so we are on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Tumblr.
For me and the 3 other people who still use Tumblr.
Yeah. Dying a slow death, I suppose. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. Max, do you have anything else to say about Carnival of Souls?
Should have done Devil's Carnival instead.
I'm cutting that out. That's fucking disgusting that you said that.
Love you all.